As you approach the city gates, a guard steps forward. "Ho, sir! State your business before entering the capital." Drawing my sword, I ram it into his chest. "My business is none of yours, and don't call me a hoe." It's approaching 11:30 at night when you hear a knock at the door. Who is it? An old woman stands on your doorstep. "Excuse me, sir, I need to use your phone. There was an accident, you see, and my husband, he was—" I draw my .45 and I shoot her in the face. What? Why? Old people, dude. You can't trust them. The space pirate sneers back at you. "I'll never tell you where the secret base is hidden." Maybe we could use some persuade skills and we could convince him that, screw this, I'm going to shove him in the airlock. Okay, well, he starts banging on the door. Wait, I'll tell you everything you want to know." Too late for that now, and I hit the cycle button and blow him out into space. Dude, he was about to tell us where the base was. He defied us. Now quiet. I want to watch his silent scream as saliva boils off his tongue. Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be discussing a topic that many gamers should be familiar with, the murder hobo. For those not familiar with the term, murder hobos are characters in a tabletop role-playing game who pretty much wander town to town, killing absolutely everything that they encounter. Bothersome or annoying NPCs? Dead. Shopkeepers who don't want to reduce their prices? Dead. Murder hobos never hesitate to stab, shoot, or burn their way through the game, solving every obstacle they encounter with an unquenchable thirst for blood. Now, some groups out there really do like this, so if everyone in your group is perfectly happy rampaging your way through the gaming world, killing absolutely every NPC you encounter, then have at it. Have fun. This video is probably not for you. But for most tabletop gamers, they find the murder hobo to be a problem. Murder hobos can suck the fun out of a game and can cause groups to break apart. Often in forums or different YouTube videos like this, they're treated as something that only game masters have to deal with, but that is not true. A lot of players do not enjoy gaming with somebody whose idea of role-playing is just simply saying a pithy one-liner and then slaughtering NPCs. So if those players are not having fun because they're playing with a murder hobo, then oftentimes they're going to decide to leave the game, which overall ends up hurting the group as a whole. So if a game master isn't having fun because of one, two, or a whole party of murder hobos, then of course they might stop running the game and now nobody is getting to play and nobody is having fun. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. What causes murder hobos and what to do about that. And we have several reasons. I think I've listed this one at 9. So if you like list videos, these are 9 reasons for murder hobos. And these can be done as either the sole reason, or they're usually kind of a mix and match. It's a little bit of one and a little bit of another. And then it's going to be followed by what to do about them. First, they're not invested in the game. These players don't see the setting world as a place, or the NPCs as people. They don't care about the history or the lore or the politics and all those cool little details that a game master adds, or any of that. Why? Well, it could be that the game master didn't actually provide them with the world or even remotely interesting characters to interact with. Or maybe the game master believes they did that, however, they didn't actually do that in a way that the murder hobo found to be interesting, meaning the game master provided it in a way that was interesting to them, but really wasn't interesting to their players. Whatever the cause is, the reason that the murder hobo doesn't hesitate to slaughter their way through the world is they have zero interest in talking to any of the NPCs, because to them, this isn't a world that the game is set in. It's nothing but a cold arena with nothing but obstacles to kill. Or it could be that they're just bored. Maybe the role-playing is a little too much for them, with overly long dialogues, or we have these huge info dumps that the game master is dumping on them, or just tedious inventories where the player characters have to go through all their equipment very regularly. Maybe the player is feeling neglected during the game as the game master is paying just a little bit too much attention to one of the other players' side quests, or maybe one of the other players is just hogging the spotlight. Now the murder hobo has just been kind of sitting there the whole game doing nothing, and they haven't been able to do anything for quite a while. Or maybe the rest of the party is just taking too long to decide what their next action is going to be, discussing a topic to death, talking about playing the game rather than actually playing the game. We could go on, but the end result is that the player is bored and they want to inject some sort of action or movement into the game, so they just up and kill an NPC. Might not have been the best decision in order to get the game moving, but they got the game moving and that's really all they cared about at that moment. Solving this can be done several ways, really just depending on the reason for the player's boredom. So game masters, be attentive to your players. Are you spending too much time with any single one of them and then neglecting the rest of your players? Are you droning on and on about your world or some brilliant NPC that you're having them encounter while your players just sit hostage waiting their turns to play? Players, if you have a murder hobo in your group, are they getting all stabby while you're taking an excessive amount of time making up your minds as to what your next action should be? Gaming is a group effort, and one of the easiest tricks to keep a long-running group for everybody to enjoy, and not just for the game master to enjoy, is helping everyone in the group have fun. Help everybody else at the table have a good time. Be attentive to the rest of the table, and if somebody starts looking like they're bored, it might be time to stop doing whatever it is you're doing at that time, because it clearly doesn't have that player's interest, and begin doing something that involves that player with you. Game masters, mix your games up. If all you've been doing for the last 2 hours, the past 2 sessions, is just kind of a slow burn role play, then give them some combat or some danger or something to get the blood flowing. Now, this doesn't mean that your role-playing is bad or that the murder hobo actually doesn't like role-playing. They might like role-playing quite a bit and they might like your plot quite a bit, but they're also ready for the game to move forward. They're ready for some sort of change. It's like, have you ever been watching a TV show or a movie and you really do like it? You love the acting, you love the cast, but then it starts focusing on some human drama of some character, kind of forgetting what the main plot is about, and it's going on and on about this subplot, and you're kind of sitting there going, get on with it, get back to the story, because that's what I was enjoying. It's a lot like that, but the player, instead of being able to just fast forward it, because we can't fast forward real life, they decide to inject the action themselves, and they just go ahead and start killing. So game masters, change your pace up from time to time, and don't wait until your players already get bored before you decide to start changing the pace for them. Try to inject that change of pace just before they get bored, when they're still enjoying it, but they're not really at peak enjoyment anymore. As their kind of enjoyment goes up, then it starts waning and then drops off. Try to get them right before it drops off while you still have their attention, and then boom, we're off to a different change of pace, and the players are going, wow, this is so exciting the whole time. But maybe boredom isn't the root. Maybe they're just simply reacting to the game world. If every interaction the player characters encounter is combat, or if every friendly NPC backstabs them or is just one step away from being a villain themselves, or is just simply an unlikable jerk that treats all the player characters like crap and talks down to them, you really can't blame the player characters for wanting to kill all the NPCs they encounter. At that point, it's really just a preemptive strike. If 99% of the time in your games that any problems that they encounter are going to be solved through combat, and only 1% of that is solved through roleplay, why wouldn't the players then initially try to solve every problem with combat, since that's what the answer is 99% of the time? Game masters, diversify your games. There is nothing wrong with combat. I love having combat in my games, and it's good to be a frequent thing, but it shouldn't always be the only option to any obstacle that they encounter. You want to try giving them different options, like maybe talking to the bad guys or trying to avoid certain obstacles rather than charging in head on. And you need to make these options available and crystal clear that those are options that the player characters can and probably should take. Resorting to combat is often the point of least resistance. When a player is trying to decide what to do, that's usually what they're going to do, because that's the easiest answer that they can come up with. And because they might think that that's the only option that they really have, because they might not be aware that there's other options available to them. So try to mix your scenarios up. That way the player characters, it is crystal clear that there's other ways they might be able to solve this problem. And that way, once the player characters start getting more and more encounters and they know there's multiple ways they could solve it because you've kind of eased them into it, or sometimes you might just have to tell them outright, hey, there's other ways of solving this problem. Once they get used to that, that way they're not going to try to kill every NPC they meet, because they know that there's a lot of choices available to them. And with that experience, they might be able to kind of weigh the pros and cons of what the best course of action should be. Now, speaking of reactions, one of the big things that players respond to is rewards. So how are you rewarding them? In games with experience points, like Dungeons & Dragons, XP are clearly given as a result for defeating bad guys. Open up a monster manual and you see its XP value right there. I want to reach the next level, I need to kill me one of these. A lot of very opinionated people who have no idea what they're really talking about blame the existence of murder hobos on the existence of experience points, claiming that if you get rid of experience points, you get rid of murder hobos altogether. Now, while experience points might enable some murder hobos, they don't the cause of being murder hobos. Otherwise, you wouldn't have murder-happy characters in games that don't even offer experience points as a reward. I mean, you should have seen us when we started playing Cyberpunk 2020 and we got to play with full auto weapons for the first time, so clearly experience points are not the cause for murder hobos. However, Game Masters, if you're only giving out XPs as a reward for violence, or only visibly giving them experience points as a reward for violence, then you're using your experience points wrong. XP should be given, and clearly given, for overcoming obstacles, whether that be killing the monster, smooth-talking your way past the town guard, or pulling off that impossible drive check. There is nothing wrong with adding a bit of a sliding scale to how you award your experience points, rewarding more or less depending on how they solved the obstacle and how much they really thought about it and gave it a good idea. So make it clear that the player characters got their experience points for role play and creative thinking, and straight up tell them, don't leave it be a mystery, like you're getting experience points because you guys thought of a clever way around this or you role played this one well. And you don't even have to wait till the end of the session to do it. My old Dungeon Master, back when we were playing in middle school, used to reward us experience points on the spot for creative thinking and good role play, or just doing the things that he wanted to encourage us to do more of in the future. Right then he'd say, give yourself 200 experience points, and we as players knew that if we wanted that too, we should start playing smart as well. D&D is another mechanic that helps a lot, and I have totally ripped this off and used this in a lot of other different systems that I've run, and that's inspiration. Where the players, they get a little chip or whatnot that they can then cash in for a single bonus die later on whenever they want. So if your player does something good, like role play or cleverly approach a problem in a non-murder hobo way, give them inspiration right then. Let everybody see it that you got inspiration for good role playing. And if the rest of you want inspiration, that is how you impress me. In Call of Cthulhu, sanity works as a positive reward as well. Your characters run into the burning building to save that orphan, then you get 1d4 sanity back at the end of the scenario. Rewards also don't have to be done through the rules mechanics for the game. If the PCs roleplay well, or show kindness, or they do something good, have word of their deed get out and give them a direct benefit as a result, like an invitation to meet with the mayor, or the appearance of a new patron shows up to give them a generous job offer. Or maybe different shopkeepers or tavern owners have heard about the good things that they've done, and they offer them a discount or something for their goods or services, kind of like how celebrities, they don't have to pay as much or even pay when they go to certain restaurants because the owner of that place is just so happy to have them there and show them off to everybody. If your player characters are playing good and they're role-playing well, they might be treated like local celebrities and might not have to pay for all the stuff that they normally have to pay for. However you want to do it is perfectly fine, but show the players a direct link between playing well and the reward that they receive. So that is the carrot. Now let's talk about the stick, consequences. What are the consequences of your game? Many murder hobos exist because there are no consequences, leaving them in a free-for-all to torture and kill as they please. If the player characters murder a town guard or a belligerent drunk or a cocky merchant, what happens to them as a result? Are the police sent after them? Are warrants issued? Are bounty hunters called in to chase them down? Do they get arrested and have their items and property confiscated? Do people stop wanting to deal with these player characters? And if none of that's the case and they feel no repercussions at all for their actions, then what is to stop them from being bloodthirsty dicks? Nothing's going to happen to them if they do. If an adventure is set in a different town or nation, far away from the last town or nation that the last adventure was in, then the player characters can feel that bit of a disconnect from the world that I was mentioning earlier, because there's zero blowback from the fact that they murdered their way through the last town or nation that they had their last adventure in. So that's when you start having things like bounty hunters pursue them, or their reputations precede them before they get there. And even though we're in a new place and having a new adventure, that doesn't mean that the ripples from their actions from the last adventure still can't touch them. Have a sweet job offer end up being a trap that was set up by some mercenaries. Have a child or brother or best friend or mother of that blacksmith that they murdered hunt them down. An Inigo Montoya or Oberyn Martell character that hunts them down for murdering their family. Have reward posters calling them out, listing their crimes that they committed in the last place they were in. Have businesses lock their doors whenever the player characters enter town because nobody wants to be dealing with these PCs who murder shopkeepers and tavern owners all the time. One of the things that enables murder hobo play is that very often the player characters are the most powerful people in whatever town they're in. I mean, that's why they came here to deal with the monsters or the brigands or whatnot, because no one in that local town was able to defeat the bad guys, so they brought the heroes in to solve it. So the player characters know that there's no guards or city police or anyone like that that could possibly take them in a fight. So the game master sends some guards or whatnot to deal with the fact that they went murder hobo in the town, and these guys are nowhere near as strong as they need to be to pose a threat to the player characters, and they end up getting murderized as well. So game masters, you need to be very careful for not falling into the kind of very seductive trap that's out there when you're sending more and more guards or mercenaries or bounty hunters after the player characters in order to bring them to justice or kill them for their crimes or whatever, because your intention might start becoming blurry. You don't want to find yourself personally wanting to kill the player characters because you're mad at them for sinking your game, or they aren't playing the way that you want them to play, because that starts becoming a game master versus player thing, and that starts becoming very dangerous for your game itself. Or even if you aren't, it needs to be clear to the players that this is not some personal vendetta of the game masters to kill the PCs for bad playing or anything, because if it looks like it's a vendetta from the game master, that starts becoming that bad spiral that can quickly cause a group to break apart because nobody wants to play with the game master anymore. So while yes, the player characters should have consequences, be sure that those consequences are because the NPCs want justice or want revenge for what the murder hobo did, and not because you personally as the game master want revenge. Because if you make it personal, you're likely just teaching your players that you're a spiteful jerk rather than teaching them not to be murder hobos. Now, some games do have mechanical consequences as well. Call of Cthulhu has that Sanian mechanic that I was talking about earlier, and outright murdering somebody because of some sort of perceived slight or because you didn't like their face, that can cost a player character sanity. Other games can have alignment shifts where you cut off access to certain powers or abilities as the character's alignment changes as a result of their murder hobo-ish actions. However, if you are going to introduce consequences into your game, especially game mechanic consequences into an existing campaign that hasn't had consequences before, especially rules-based consequences, don't just spring these on their players out of the blue. Warn your players first. Maybe even ease them into the consequences where it doesn't just go from fully off to fully on. Remember that we're doing all of this to avoid the biggest consequence of them all, and that's having the game fall apart because either the game master or the good players quit the game because they don't want to be playing with a bunch of murder hobos. So now the whole game falls apart, no one's having fun, and no one's happy. That's the consequence we're trying to avoid, so we need to put some consequences into the game to prevent that from happening. Now, maybe the reason for the murder hobo is not boredom or a lack of consequences or any of that. Maybe the player honestly believes that they're role-playing, they're just terrible role players. Maybe this excessive or even random killing is them just trying to play an evil or tortured character. Okay, well, first off, they're probably not experienced enough role player to be playing evil bad guys yet. So the game master, you've got a little bit of the blame to share for letting them play evil characters if they weren't ready for that. But once again, let's look at the consequences for doing that sort of thing. Fictional bad guys that are out there who just slaughter anyone for any minor reason are usually unbelievable over-the-top villains who would work with a person who's just a psychopathic loose cannon and just, prone to murdering all the people around them, whether they're friends or underlings or just random people. They'd probably find themselves assassinated pretty quickly, which brings us once again back to consequences, which is the in-game result for such a behavior like that. But also, being evil doesn't mean being just a rampant murderer, burning down every bar and orphanage that you encounter. That is an unimaginative spree killer. That is not a character. So if a player wants to play evil, and you're fine with them playing evil, then that's perfectly fine. But you might need to discuss with the player about different ways that they could approach being an evil character. Things like revenge is a dish best served cold. You have the player character show their frustration as they fight their own urges to attack this character that's displeased them, but they don't want to get themselves in trouble. And they're trying to keep their emotions in check, as they kind of, take a deep breath, maybe, smash something off to the side and turn to the person that displeased him and be all like, not here. Not now. That is a character, so talk with your player for different ideas that they could use to portray evil or a wrathful nature who isn't just running around being a boring murder hobo. Now, sometimes the source of all this is much simpler. They might just simply be frustrated with the game itself. Dice sometimes don't go the way you want, or that cool character concept that they had up front really isn't working out the way they envisioned it to work out. Maybe the player is annoyed with the game master or another player around the table. Whatever the reason, the murder hobo is frustrated and taking that frustration out on the game itself, punishing an NPC or a monster as a way of venting their emotions. This lash out, while does feel relieving for an instant, has the unintended consequences of hurting the game and are annoying the other players or creating a cascade effect of further problems which lead to more and more frustrations. This is the equivalent of getting mad and punching a wall and either breaking your hand or the wall. Now, congratulations, your day just got worse. I failed to make my persuade to negotiate a better price, then I killed the merchant. The solution to this problem isn't immediately obvious to me, then I burned the building down. Addressing the root of the problem needs to be done, especially if the root of the problem is another player around the table, which other players also include game masters. But if the source of the frustration is the game not going the way that the player wants, either their character falling below expectations or they have some bad dice rolls, it still needs to be addressed. Maybe the game challenge is just a bit too much to them and the game master needs to tone the challenge level down, or create challenges that are more suitable for that particular player character. Maybe the player needs a different character to play who can pull off whatever it is that the player is wanting to do. Maybe even change game systems if you need to, if the problems that they're having are just frustration with the game mechanics themselves. But also, the player needs to learn to voice their frustration in a different way and know that it is okay to voice their feelings to the rest of the people around the table. But if they allow it to well up into some sort of temper tantrum, it gets a lot harder to work with that player after that if they're constantly throwing these fits. Now that is accidental, and none of the examples I've given so far had actual malice behind the player's behavior, but sometimes there is malice behind that behavior, and a player might become a murder hobo as a way to punish the other players or the game master. So when I mention that a player might be bored, either because the game master is neglecting them, or one player is hogging all the spotlight, or none of the players are choosing a good course of action to take, and then the murder hobo just makes an action, there isn't necessarily malice behind that decision. Frustration, boredom, yeah, but not malice. At least, not always. Sometimes a player starts killing NPCs and burning churches down as a way to upset the game master or the other players. They're lashing out in some sort of hope of possibly punishing the other people around the table. The effects are the same, but the intent behind it is different. And a player who is doing this sort of a revenge or a way to teach a lesson to the other people around the table, oh, you wronged me, so now I'm going to burn down the game or kill your favorite NPC. If that's what we have, then we've got a much bigger problem on our hands than just simply a murder hobo. Because even if the murder hobo player has a justifiable reason for being upset, taking it out in-game is not going to solve anything. This is where we start entering that realm of player versus game master mindset, which I've discussed before as to why that is bad. But communication needs to happen, not just about the murder hoboing, but with the reason behind the murder hoboing. Because groups that start resorting to in-game tactics as a way to settle grievances, and torching the game as a form of attack against one another, those groups are not known to last very long. However, sometimes a player isn't murder hoboing by accident or as an intentional way to try to teach someone a lesson. Sometimes they're just a big jerk. They're intentionally behaving in a way that's hurting other people's enjoyment, either because that's their goal or because they simply don't care if they hurt anyone else's enjoyment. These are the rarest and by far the most extreme cases, and I've talked about this in both my RPG Social Contract and the Roleplay Terrorist videos, but if a player's enjoyment is coming from intentionally hurting hurting another player's enjoyment, and Game Master is included when I talk about other players, then the entire game as a whole suffers. And if the only thing that feeds this player's enjoyment is inflicting pain on the other people around the table, then you really shouldn't play with that person. So, you've got a murder hobo in your group. Maybe you're the game master, or maybe you're just another one of the players, but the murder hobo is causing problems. What are you going to do about it? Well, the good news is that most murder hobos grow out of it. It really is a trait most encountered in newer role players. And as they learn what the game is and the dynamics of being able to play with other people, they usually change their ways. So talk to this player. If someone is doing something that is hurting your fun or the fun of somebody else at the table, bring it up to them. Find out why it is that they're doing it. In some cases, they might not even know that they're hurting anyone else's good time. And very often, once they find out that they're hurting someone else's fun, they immediately stop because they don't want to do that. But through the course of the conversation, you might uncover areas that you are doing wrong as well. If their behavior is a response to your behavior, or because you aren't giving them something that they need, you can fix two problems at once. Gaming is a group effort, and if you have 5 players and 4 of them love a slow burn political mystery game, unraveling intricate plots, and the other one player just wants action and adventure, can we compromise? Maybe tone down the heavy role play and increase the action and adventure, but in return, that one player doesn't just attack something the instant the game isn't going the way that they want it to be. And while I've discussed certain things that a game master can do to reward or encourage certain behavior with their players, the other players around the table have a lot of power in this as well by showing the murder hobo alternatives to just slaughtering everybody if they lead by example. Except that much of the blame might be your fault. Other players who are hogging the game or being too pushy about what they want, cripplingly indecisive, or game masters who are a whole slew of reasons out there that we've already mentioned before, such as no consequences, not giving them a reason to care, making every NPC an asshole or a villain, not rewarding the right behavior, not being attentive to everyone's needs, or simply allowing the other players to make the mistakes that the other players are making, such as hogging the game or taking too much time to make a decision. Yeah, game masters, the other players around the table are the ones doing it, but you're the ones allowing it, meaning that you're the one allowing the murder hobo to be a murder hobo. So approach this with more of a, hey, something isn't working, rather than a, you're doing something wrong. Make it more of a, I'm having trouble with this, and I want to know what I can do to help us out because, the game's beginning to suffer as a result of this. Just be ready that some of the blame and the need to change might rest on your shoulders. And accepting that part of it is sometimes the hardest part to do. Now, game masters, if everybody in your group is a murder hobo, then it's probably your fault that everyone in your group is a murder hobo. Find out why. Talk to them. Are they bored? Are they not invested in your world? Have you just been letting them get away with it so long because you don't want to upset them because maybe they won't want to play with you anymore, or they might be upsetting whatever game it is you have planned, so you're letting them get away with being a murder hobo because you don't want to upset whatever sort of session you've got planned in your head, and that goes against that, so now they got a free pass to do whatever they want. Find out what is happening and then fix it, and fix it with them. But sometimes you can't fix it. Some players and what they like and what they want just can't mesh, and no compromise can be met between them. And if that's the case, it's probably best that you go ahead and part ways and start playing with other people, and both of you find a group that fits more of your personal styles. But if you don't discuss first with the players why this is happening and you just kind of either leave the game or you kick them out of the game, then the same problems might start happening again and again in the future because you've never found out the source for whatever the problem is. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews and how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Until next time, amigos, stay awesome. This video went a lot longer than expected, and I got bored, so I just started killing NPCs 15 minutes ago.